Chad White and the Word Church for hosting this event. This event is sponsored by the Dayton chapter of the New Black Panther Party, the Word Church, and Pastor Chad White, and Neighborhoods Over Politics. As we all know, the issue of human trafficking is on the rise in this country. Every day we're hearing more and more stories about people being abducted and forced into sexual slavery. We know that we've been having an ongoing problem with prostitution all over the city. I think we've been desensitized to it because it's been going on for so long and it's so commonplace now. We also been hearing about a lot of kidnappings, and you know, we've had ongoing problems with strip clubs. You know, North Dixie Strip was notorious for the strip clubs. One of the things that helped that problem was a tornado knocked out a lot of those strip clubs, y'all know. So hopefully they don't rebuild. But the sexual industry in America is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's affecting all of us. Even if you know, I was sharing with the panel earlier how back in 2005, I actually started a campaign to close the old Parkway Inn. Y'all remember the Parkway Inn on North Dixie Drive? Because it was just a big crack house / house of prostitution. And I had a relative that was actually being used as a prostitute. And when I approached the hotel, the manager, he cussed me out and got belligerent with me and told me to get off his property. And what I did was, being a Black Panther, I got me a sign, and I stood out in front and started picketing. And I got the attention of the local news media. They did an interview. After the interview, I got a call from the Sheriff's Department, Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, and the prosecutor's office. And we put together a case with the state bar marshals and the health department, and we actually took them to court, and they surrendered before we could actually put on our case. But we closed down that hotel, and it was the first time in the state of Ohio that an actual hotel was nuisance abated. And eventually they tore it down. And remember, there was a strip club next to that, and they kind of worked together. They would go to the strip club and get aroused and then go next door to the house of prostitution. Later, that strip club became the Plush. Y'all remember that? The Plush was in the news a lot for the shootings and stuff. And we actually met with Harrison Township trustees to deal with the issues of the Plush. Now, I don't know what happened, but it's not open now. Anybody know what happened with the Plush nightclub? But there was a lot of complaints about the violence and the sexual stuff that was going on inside the place. So I say that to say when the community comes together, we can bring about change and we can bring about positive results. So today what we did is myself and the pastor, we wanted to get together and start a conversation, an ongoing conversation, and actually build a task force for the future to deal with the problem of human trafficking and sexual exploitation in our community. I read an article last week about the city of Milwaukee and how all of these community groups have come together in Milwaukee, and what they're trying to do is stamp out sexual exploitation in the entire city. That's a big city, right? And so I really got excited when I read that, because I said Dayton is, you know, not to say it's a small problem, but we could actually make that happen. I think if we bring enough people together from different areas of leadership in this city, we can actually make a serious impact on the sexual exploitation business in Dayton, Ohio, and Montgomery County. We could get the message out there that You can't come to my neighborhood and pick up prostitutes. But we've become so insensitive to this issue. I live in Dayton View, and every time I leave the house and go down Riverview Avenue, you know, that's the strip now. And you know, I feel sorry for those young women, but we never are going, and Shanice, you know this, we never going to get people to really invest in our community as long as we got these type things going on, right? So I want to welcome all my panelists who showed up this morning. I want to welcome the audience, and I'm going to turn it over to the pastor and let him take it from here.
I just want to make sure that your stay here is welcoming and that you do enjoy it. I just left Detroit yesterday for a conference on human trafficking. As I read my timeline on social media, Facebook, Twitter, other social media platforms, I see that this is becoming more and more prevalent, and something has to be done. Something needs to be addressed, and so we're going to make a valiant effort and attempt on this morning to begin this conversation, and we do know that for minority communities, people of color, black people in particular, that it has to become an epidemic for white America in order for it to be recognized in black America. And so we know that our people are disproportionately affected by sex crimes, sex trafficking, prostitution, drug addiction. And so we definitely need to address this, the commercialism of hip hop and rap with these young ladies, and have a 23-year-old daughter that wants a $1,700 East St. Laurent purse, and I'm like, nah, that ain't happening with my money. Now you may buy it on your own, but our kids have become so adapted to capitalism and commercialism that these things make it enticing, and many of them are willing to get involved in this type of stuff with dope boys and drug dealers in order to just, or even men with money in order to acquire these things. And so hopefully on today we will be able to address some of these issues and begin a serious and meaningful meritorious dialogue on how we can address these issues and make our community better. Before we begin, because this is a house of worship, let us have a word of prayer, and then we will start with the introduction of our panelists. God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for this time of sharing, that as beloved community we can come together to address issues that are affecting the least of these. And we do recognize that we're all tied together in a garment, interconnected garment of destiny, that when my brother or sister falls, that it pulls community down, and when they rise, it pulls community up. And so we pray for wisdom, we pray for insight, we pray for sagacity, God, that we can overcome the wiles of the enemy, the devil, that we again can build beloved community. Thank you again. We pray that our time together would be resourceful, it would be meritorious, it would be meaningful. In the name of him who died for us on Calvary, God's only Son, Jesus the Christ's name we pray. Amen. So we're going to just pass the mic down and start with introductions. All right, Judge Mia Wortham Spells.
Good morning again. I am Judge Mia Wortham Spells. I am a judge in the Dayton Municipal Court. I've been on the bench for almost 5 years, and before I began as a judge, I was an attorney, and I did criminal defense work. My law office was in the Wright Dunbar area, and before that I was a prosecutor in the city of Dayton. And I wanted to say to Pastor White and to the Black Panther Party and to neighborhoods over politics that a time such as this is that you are confronting this issue. And you are beginning this conversation, which is good, because so many people have not begun this conversation. And I want to bring good news, though, when we start this out. I just had this week, I was approached by the Ohio Justice and Policy Center, and I was selected as a judge to conduct the Safe Harbor expungements. And the Safe Harbor expungements is a program that allows victims of prostitution and human trafficking to expunge their entire record, with the exception of murder, aggravated murder, and rape. Any and everything else, they are allowed to expunge. And so I just had my first hearing on December the 12th, successfully had a hearing, and two ladies came to give such a poignant story of their life and how it began. And I wanted to let you know that there's good news on the horizon, and we are now, based upon a task force that Governor Kasich started in 2012, and the state legislature changed in 2017 in terms of prostitution laws and those who compel others. I'm sure the officer will talk to you, because he and I have been on the same track for many, many years. When I started as a prosecutor, the prostitution was looked at like, 10, 15, 20. That was basically what they looked at. And then they eventually evolved to a John school, and then it eventually evolved to HIV testing. And that was it until Governor Kasich came and thought it was best for women, children, and our community and our nation that human trafficking be looked at. So he started the task force. So I'm glad to be here this morning, and I can give you more information as we go along. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Good morning. I'm Ron Strehle, Dayton Police. I don't have to say that part, but I get to wear the uniform. My expertise is not human trafficking. My expertise is the initiatives that we do, how we reach out, how we start making this more of a help than less of a crime. I also do all the statistical analysis for the west side of Dayton, so that's where my specialty falls in, is where are these numbers at now, where have they been in the past 10 years. I really appreciate coming out here today. I love talking to people. I love doing the teaching, the instruction, and I think the biggest part of this problem is getting that knowledge out there and getting victims less afraid of what's going on. Because right now, a lot of times, if you're a victim of human trafficking, you also are afraid of the police. And that has to stop. They have to realize that we start the process of getting them help, if they will come to us. But a lot of times they do not. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for inviting me today. I'm here to represent the YWCA Dayton. My name is Megan Garrison. I'm the sexual assault program educator at our organization. So we work kind of in a twofold system in the sexual assault program. One is our advocacy, which means that we are intaking clients of gender-based violence and working with them, whether it's getting them housing, whether it's helping them through the legal system, whether it's medical aid or counseling, making sure that they know exactly where to go and how to get the help they need. And on the other side of it, which is more where I predominantly work, is the education and prevention side. So I work with organizations like Abolition Ohio on the side of human trafficking to kind of go into schools, middle schools, high schools, college campuses, as well as working within beauty shops and creative images and places to train staff to recognize signs of human trafficking, to be able to see if someone is in their place of business or in their place of work, or there's a student that's at risk of in a situation of human trafficking, so that we can kind of intervene and make sure that the staff is trained to recognize these things. So that's kind of why I'm here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon McClain. I'm the Montgomery County Recorder. Previously becoming a county official, I served as a magistrate and acting judge over the Dayton Municipal Court, and obviously before that as an attorney. In those both capacities, I had the opportunity to not just represent, but also to engage and interact with sentencing concerning prostitution-related cases and solicitation. I'm here specifically to highlight some of the things that I believe that are foundational for us to begin to try to turn this trend that we are currently under in regards to human trafficking. Currently, right now, Ohio is one of 22 states remaining in the union that allows children to be charged with prostitution. We also currently are the only remaining state in the United States that allows children to actually have a burden where they have to prove that if they were in fact charged with prostitution, if they were coerced or forced into it somehow, for an adult to actually be charged concerning juvenile sexual trafficking. So these are things that I believe that are at the foundational core of what we have to work toward to evolve. That all starts with voting. Many of you, I know most of the folks in here, you've heard me say it before, I'm going to say it again today, and being the fact that your voice is your vote. Do not allow it to be silenced on the ears of those people who need to hear it the most. We have to begin to start changing legislation if we are going to be able to have an impact on this, so we can make sure we protect not just our community, but the least of these that reside in. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Renee Chase, and I'm with Oasis House. We run out of the Life Enrichment Center over on Finley Avenue. I serve a couple ways with Oasis House. I get the privilege of traveling around and speaking either Sunday mornings, small groups, wherever, one-on-one, just to provide education and kind of tell who we are. Also, my most important role is I work on the streets with the women, and I've been doing that for 3 years. And so I go out and I take them what we call random acts of kindness bags, and those have basic necessities that they need. And they also have, was out Tuesday night, so I was able to take them gloves and scarves, different things that they need. Obviously, most of the girls that I work with are homeless, so I can't take them, you know, like big bags of stuff, or I would love to. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and that is something I always have to keep in mind. And a couple things that I just always really reinforce when I get the opportunity to speak to people is that the women that I work with are really child victims who were never rescued. We didn't get to them in time. And so if you look at them that way with compassion and non-judgment, which is how Oasis House works, then I believe we can change stigmas and the way people think. And that is what I'm trying to do. I want everyone to realize that's someone's daughter, someone's sister. Maybe she was someone's best friend at some point, and she was really just a child victim we didn't get to in time. And so that's why we're working right now. I have always said I will never come off the streets. That's my heart. These girls I have built relationships with over the past 3 years, and I'm just excited that Dayton is kind of realizing what's going on. Oasis House has been working since 2005. When we opened, there were 19 strip clubs or sexually oriented businesses on Dixie Drive, which is where we originated out of. And obviously now there's not really anything, so that's great news. And we have so many success stories, and we can go into that later, but you know, I am encouraged about the people that are here today, and I hope that you are encouraged as well, and I hope we can all work together, because this is our city, and it's going to take each one of us to educate and to show love again, and compassion and non-judgment, and that's who we are. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting Oasis House. I concur with everything that Renee just said. I'm the new executive director there. We're a nonprofit, faith-based organization. We provide safe housing for the women. We have counseling, support services. I'm also a retired probation officer, and I can say this. Early in my career, I did not realize that picking up a prostitute was against the law for a male. I knew it was for a woman because I saw the cases. Many, many cases of prostituted women came through our offices. And it wasn't until I started seeing men charged and convicted of soliciting a prostitute that I realized, oh, this is a crime for men too. So I'm so happy to see the paradigm shift from where women are not necessarily the perpetrators, they are being perpetrated on. And it's so wonderful that we now have this expungement court in Dayton Municipal that's going to help women get back on track, because criminal records stop employment and housing and many, many other things. So this is a brand new start for so many women. I was talking to a woman just the other day who has lived a life of prostitution. She's in her 40s, and I was trying to give her like a pep talk and say, well, you've got so many years ahead of you. There's so many things you can do. And she said, who would want a prostitute? And that's how she looks at herself, like she's unworthy. So I just want to say thank you all for your devotion, your interest to this cause. And I promise you at Oasis, we are doing everything within our capacity to help the women that we serve. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanice Turner-Sloss, and I am the board member as well as the co-founder for Neighborhoods Over Politics. We are a training and advocacy nonprofit in the Dayton area. We started back in 2015. So I will be speaking on trafficking in regards from a social aspect and empirical data to support that. I'm a mother, a wife, a sister. So I'll be speaking in that regard. But we all know that prostitution is the oldest industry, right? We also know that prostitution is supported mainly by the upper echelon. Is that correct to say? Right? And so with that, we have to look at, and the recorder, he spoke well in regards to holding our elected official accountable in legislation that needs to be passed to support human trafficking and prostitution. We just found out, Thursday, the 12th of December, that our current governor, Mike DeWine, signed Senate Bill 5. And check this, right? This is interesting. Prostitution would now be labeled as a fourth degree felony, up to 18 months. 18 months. Some of our more, if you will, underground, informal crimes or vigilants who partake in those different illicit behaviors, they receive more penalties, if you will, and more jail time than prostitution. And we know that prostitution, in fact, is the gateway to trafficking. So we have to also look at, when we talk about legislation, when we talk about holding our elected officials accountable, we have to look around us, and we have to look at it as a standpoint as it's about access, it's about opportunity. These young girls between the ages of 14 and 15, they are looking for opportunity. They're looking for a warm bed to sleep in. They're looking for clothes. They're looking for shelter. They're looking for food, our daily necessities that they don't have. And until we address the issues of poverty, and until we address the social ills in our community, it will continue to be the cycle that we are seeing today that will continue. Prostitution is old. It is old. Human trafficking is nothing new. But again, we have to be mindful, vigilant, and we have to hold people accountable. And it is my hope that we won't be up here speaking to you all, the audience, but this will be more a fluid dialogue about how we move forward. Yes, we need a task force, but we also need to make sure that we're in Dayton public schools to make sure that we're educating our young ladies and our young men about predators, about opportunities and ways to prevent them from going into prostitution or pornography or the brothel house or strip clubs. Because again, these are all gateways to human trafficking and what we're seeing today. So I look forward to the conversation. I want to thank the new Black Panther Party as well as Dr. White. Thank you very much, and as well as thank you to the panelists as well as the audience. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right, so at this point, are we going to get the audience engaged at this point? I just wanted to ask briefly, I know when we first started speaking out about human trafficking, and I was telling you, we closed the hotel down. We did a holistic thing over in Five Oaks, North Main Street, where it was really, the prostitution was really jumping off really big. And at that time, that was in like 2005 or so. The attitudes were law enforcement, and no disrespect, officer, but the attitudes were that those girls were out there because they chose to be out there. And so they were reluctant to get involved in helping us, because that's what we was trying to do, is clean up all these prostitutes off North Main. But yeah, the attitudes were that they were out there because they wanted to. But I knew personally, I'm a recovering addict, okay, so I spent a lot of time in crack houses, okay, and I understand that when you give people, I know how the dope boys operate, okay, and a young lady might come in and they'll give them some free dope to get them started, right, and then once you smoke crack, you know what it does to you is it makes you crave more and more and steal and rob, and so that was the method that they would use on these girls. You know, they would get them geeking. You know, y'all know the term geeking. You know, everybody knows that term. And then it was a vicious cycle because they never got off of that geeking roller coaster. You know, and then after you know, they would turn 20 or 30 tricks. The mindset was, I'm dirty now, I'm bad, there's no way back, so I might as well keep doing what I'm doing. So I just wanted to ask Brandon, you talked about legislation, about attitudes, you and Shanice talked about attitudes amongst politicians. You know, most politics are male-driven. One of the things that we found out is that during that time there were a lot of males in position in Dayton, Ohio. I won't call them names, but I know some of their names, right? That were actually Johns, okay? And not just the leadership. I mean, you know, growing up in the hood, a John is not a bad thing, right? Especially when it comes to this girl that don't care about herself, you feel me? And so how do we change knowing that, knowing you got a male chauvinist type society that we live in, right? How do we change, you know, we can't legislate morality, but how do we, from a legal standpoint, from a political standpoint, how do we change people's minds, or how do we make it harder for that narrative to go forward? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We'll give you this mic.
I think it really all starts with accountability. The people who are, whether it's, you know, in the city, at the Capitol, in Columbus, or here locally, are there to represent the people's interests, not their own interests. And so I believe that the narrative has to be centered and focused around accountability. Today is a community-driven conversation about a community issue with members of the community.
I'm sorry. We're finished talking. I figured I did.
Okay. Nope, y'all can hear me. Yes. So what we're talking about is something that is at its core a concern of the community. And so those people who are in positions to bring about the change for the community and represent the interests of the community have to stand up for the community. If that does not happen, then that should be representation of the fact that there needs to be a change made. Those changes that happen concerning in the political realm only can happen through voting. Okay, so it's just like anything else. I think we all grew up at a time when our parents said that if someone won't have a conversation with you about something, then that should tell you where they stand. As an adult, I still believe that's one of the truest adages that is representative every day. If someone doesn't care for you, do they come up and embrace you? Do they come up and talk to you? No, they don't. And that means something. It always has. And so I think that we have to pick up signs that are laid down. We can't ignore and try to reshape. We have to accept things as they are. If people don't want to represent us, we have to accept that as what it is and find someone who does. That's on the political realm. From a legal standpoint, as an attorney, I know there are other attorneys on the bench and possibly out as well throughout the audience. This, I believe, has to do with the trend that is representative of not just the authors of the law, but also the interpreters. You know, at that time, information may not have been as widespread, but one thing that's apparent today is that information certainly is known. And so because that information is known, the cat is out of the bag, people know, we have to hold them to the standard of the knowledge that they now have.
Anybody else?
So I would concur with the recorder, McClain, in regards to holding our elected officials accountable, but I'll take a step back with that. We also need to make sure that we are electing people that look like us, that understands our concerns, that understand the issues, but who live in our communities, who in fact can best represent our issues, who's able to advocate for us. You just spoke about in regards to the political arena being white male driven, and it is true, right? But again, we have to not only elect people that look like us, because we saw that in Alabama, right, with the overturn of the women's right to choose, and we had women in office that actually signed for those things to happen. But we need to have like-minded people in those positions that are, again, who are advocating for us, for our issues. And it's not enough just to have people in those positions. People need to be knowledgeable. They need to be, they need to have the experience and the expertise to do so. It's not just enough to have your name on the ballot to say that you're going to run for a particular office and you don't have any of the credentials or the experience to follow. So yes, in fact, we need to hold people accountable. We need to also, with that, holding our elected officials accountable, we have to make sure that our electors are educated. We need to know the issues. You will be surprised, this past election, November, the number of people who came to the voting polls and didn't know who to vote for. They honestly did not know who to vote for. They're looking for the slate card. Or they're looking for the poll workers to tell them, who should I vote for? What issues are on the ballot? What does this mean? How do I vote? Which way do I vote? We have to start mobilizing and educating people on the issues, because people are dealing with the day-to-day struggles. They're dealing with the fact, how do I make sure that I have heat in my home, food on my table, and transportation? Let alone healthcare costs, right? And having access to food. So, again, it takes strategic effort. It takes for us to be intentional, to have these conversations, but again, to be mindful about who we put in office. Not just because someone tells us to, but are we seeing these individuals in the community, right, Brandon? Just what you just spoke of. You want to know that someone is acknowledging you, that they are in fact in the community, they're working on behalf of these very same issues. They're speaking to these issues, and they're not just coming around for a political season or because they want to jumpstart their political ambitions. So again, we have to be intentional. Thank you.
I am an elected official. But I think that the reason I was elected is that I am authentic, and I spoke truth to power, and I will continually do that. And I want to highlight this as we now have evolved. I think there's two reasons that we've evolved. Number one, the Me Too has brought some evolution. And the evolution also is a zero tolerance. And I can tell you, girls coming out, women coming out of law school, they understand zero tolerance so much greater than those of us who came out of law school 30, 40 years ago. The other thing I want to point out is this, and Pastor White mentioned this, is when it's a crisis to white women, and it's a health issue, then it becomes on the governor's initiative. And that's the real fact. And once we have white women who are now opiate, they're addicted to opiates, they now are on that track of trafficking, they now meet a trafficker, then it becomes a crisis. And so let's not play games. We understand that now, we understand that. And so now that is how we have these initiatives. But I do want to say that we are the recipients, all of us are the recipients of that legislation. And so we'll take that. For whatever reason it started, the genesis, it is a change. And I do see that the landscape has changed. And so I think that those of you out there, you have to understand when you elect officials that you elect people who have an understanding of that, who have the compassion, who also have the understanding, and also speak truth to power. Thank you.
Okay, you said something about that Me Too movement, and the Me Too movement is troublesome for me. I'm not going to get into it, but maybe that's that chauvinistic part of myself. But we don't have time, I think, to really get into to that in depth, because I think a lot of men, just being honest, we're going to be straight up this morning. I think a lot of men have a problem with the Me Too movement. Have y'all heard that?
My point was that's what's creating the evolution.
Yeah, I know, I understand.
Not whether the right or the wrong, but that is what is creating the paradigm.
I understand, but I think
because don't think it's all men that think
Right.
And some women, we think like you think too.
is that right? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. But yeah, I think there's some extremes in there, but maybe we'll have a forum on that. Call it Heat 2 or something. But right now, I want to open up the floor for the audience. If you guys got questions or comments, if you could direct the questions at any of these experts up here, and just keep your comments, to a minimum. Go ahead, brother.
I just want to know, are there any local statistics on trafficking?
Yes, there are. So a great resource that you can always look to in the Montgomery County area that also spans out to neighboring counties is Abolition, Ohio. So they're kind of a task force that directly works on human trafficking issues, whether it's pushing legislation, whether it's forming speakers bureaus. And so they have a human trafficking 101 training that is open to the public. They do it once a month, and you can just go and learn every single detail you want to know about human trafficking nationally and locally in Ohio, and specifically in Montgomery County. And so a few of those notes that there are 40.3 million victims of human trafficking in the United States, currently by statistics, and that in Dayton, Ohio, there are 1,032 identified victims and 4,209 that are identified as at-risk victims within the Ohio community, and the majority of victims are white, female, and minors. So those are just kind of the basic statistics that are out there. But then when we talk about human trafficking, I just want to make it very clear that we're talking a lot about sex trafficking and exploitation, but human trafficking, it's 50-50, where there's labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And so labor trafficking on a national average is the same as sex trafficking. So we have to make sure that when we talk about human trafficking as a whole, that we're also focusing on the fact that the trafficking is predominantly a money business. It's a simplified business model. You have people that are providing services for free so people at the top can make money. It's all about money, and when we talk about people that are doing these things, it's never something that, like we in past, that women that are exploiting themselves, they're not exploiting themselves. They're in a system that has made it that it's their only option to gain any kind of the basic needs that we take for granted. So we have to be careful that even in labor situations, when women are trying to come into the United States, or men are coming into the United States, they're being trafficked through labor. So there's a lot of instances where sex is not a part of the trafficking. It's when you think of maids in New York City and how they're being used for labor. So it's a money business, and I think it's really important that the laws that are starting to change now is that they're coming at it as if they're cutting off the money stream, versus in the past we've prosecuted these women and these men and these young people that are exploiting themselves for basic needs. We've stopped looking at them as the people committing a crime and looking at as we call the Johns, like who's soliciting them. Those are the people that are actually, if you cut off those people and they're no longer looking for that service, and you're cutting off the business model. So I think that's an important thing to look at when we're talking about. But just so you know, it's 100,000 of the number of human trafficking are children under the age of 18. It's 100,000 in the United States.
So, two things you said. One, that you can get trained, the Abolition,
Ohio.
trains. So, where is that located? And
So the training, I think it changes, but you can look on their Facebook page and they have like an event for it. But it's called Human Trafficking 101. You can find it on their website, on their Facebook page. Yeah, and you can just go, but if you want to do the in-person one, then it's usually hosted at, it's like a realtor's office that's near the University of Dayton. Because it's the law school coming out of UD that kind of like leads the task force.
okay.
Dayton Area Board of Realtors.
One thing we want to do is we're going to build a task force, and she had recommended that we get some of that training. So obviously, after the meeting, we're going to put a group together that actually wants to deal with this issue on a long-term basis.
Okay, the other question I had was, you mentioned, so I'm an educator, high school student, so I always like to come to them with some facts. So you said that certain things make you at risk, so what are those?
So this is kind of where it depends on your local school, but some of the common things that would lead you to make you at risk is that if you are in a marginalized community. So we do see that predominantly people of color are in situations that they're facing, which is, when we look at the statistics, it says the majority of victims are white, female, and young. But that's because historically they're the ones that are coming forward and reporting. So if you look at that statistic, that may not be a complete reflection of the situation, because in marginalized communities, they're not coming forward and they're not reporting. We're not ever addressing the needs of the communities that are marginalized. So if you have a student that is on a low socioeconomic bracket, it's probably someone you need to pay attention to, just because younger generations now are like, I forgot who said it, was talking about that it's a very capitalism, materialistic kind of culture that surrounds our younger generations, and they're wanting for things that are very expensive and out of reach, and so they're going to turn to something that can bring that money. Also, runaways are a huge issue, obviously, because they're turning to whatever they can to suit those needs. But there are also there are certain disabilities you have to pay attention to. We don't talk about, it's not as public as it should be, but people within the disability community are also very much facing issues of human trafficking more at a larger risk than other communities.
Go ahead, Steve. What signs should we look for if we're trying to be involved in stopping sex trafficking? And where in Dayton would you say are the most sex trafficked persons? You're going to be
Do you know the areas?
I do. Where I concentrate my time is in East Dayton, and I'll just keep it at that. I don't share specific streets that I'm on or specific areas, just because I don't share that in public. The East Dayton area is where I am, where Oasis House mainly serves. Now, we will go over to an area on North Main Street and an area on Salem Avenue as well. But for the most part, honestly, I run out of time. There's only so much time before night falls, because honestly, the busiest time that I'm out there is out 11 to 2, which is when the men leave for lunch and they can go, and then they can get back for lunch to work. And then 5 to 7. Why? Because they can stop on their way home, still make soccer practice, and get home to their wife and kids, if we're being honest. And I can be very honest and say things, but that's that's the gist of it, is really, those are the areas, because why? East Dayton is very close to downtown, let's just be honest. And that is where I am at with the girls for the most part.
And it used to be, North Main was really like the hot spot in Dayton, because that's the main vein through the city, and there was a lot of businesses on North Main, and so, I mean, there were thousands of prostitutes. When we were over there doing outreach, there was thousands of girls. I mean, not just on that main street, but in the alleys, and there was a lot of crack houses over there, and it was like big business. We even seen incidents where young women that lived in that area who were not actually on drugs would, if they needed money, you could just step out on Main Street. And the guys were so used to the girls out there. And then you could just flag somebody down and go around the corner and take care of business and have $50. That became kind of commonplace in that neighborhood. And that's one of the, I'm gonna let you ask a question, Steve, you know. Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about when you were talking about certain areas and certain groups of people. You know, how does popular culture, that reinforces a lot of this, because the average rap video, right? They stripping and they throwing money, and the narrative is oftentimes to these women is to get that money by any means necessary. So, and that's a hard thing to overcome. Would you agree?
It is. I see two things, and what I say is, I will just speak for the girls that I know, that I work with, the women that are on the streets. Most of them, honestly, just made one mistake that led to another mistake, that led to another, and they had no support system. And when you take away your family, when you take away your best friends, when you take away that support system of someone to say, maybe this isn't a good idea, maybe you shouldn't do that. Honestly, that's how it starts. The girls that I work with, I will tell you, let's say if I see 12 women one evening, I will say that 10 of those 12 are actively on something. They're high, they're on whatever. So that is what I'm dealing with. Not to say that that totally happens, the wanting the more things, but I also think we speak a lot about, when I do a presentation, the Romeo effect, where they are kind of lured in by the promise of these things, by this boyfriend. And then once they think they're in love, again, if the girl's at risk, the runaway, in a foster care system, someone who doesn't have a best friend or parents who are really keeping track of them, then, you know, they fall in love with this man, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, well, you owe me. And I say it when I'm talking to the girls, and sometimes I don't get to talk to them very long, sometimes I do. One of the things that some of them say, well, he buys me Subway. And I always say, if I hear one more time, he buys me Subway. But to them, they have two basic needs. It's food and shelter. And everybody has those needs. And when you don't have those, and you are so tired, and they have dark circles under their eyes, you cannot, all you want is that Subway, or you want shelter. So they're just caught in a cycle. Again, it's one mistake after one mistake, and they don't feel worthy. They really don't feel worthy that, okay, well, I've done this to myself and nobody loves me, or people are going to judge me. And that's not, because you know what? I could have been in the same spot she was. It was one mistake that led to another. And then the other issue that we have, and we really don't have time to go into that, is this sexual abuse that occurred. Most of these girls have faced some kind of trauma or sexual abuse at a very young age. And so when you have that in your history, and then sometimes it's all you know. I have a girl who her mom sold her at age 8 to start paying the rent every month. I have another one that her uncle took her to go do fun things, which turned into pictures, which turned into videos, which turned into you can't tell your family or they're going to kick you out. So these are the realities. They're ugly realities, but they are true realities. And I never shy away from letting people know these are the realities that they face. Some of us, we can't comprehend that. Some of us, we can. We've never been in that situation, or maybe some of us have. That's where it's absolutely, we cannot judge these girls because we don't know what decisions they had to make that we never had to make.
are the majority of those who are sex trafficked, are they foreign or are they local? And how is a person brought into sex trafficking? Because we have the thinking that they're snatched into a van, or are they from a family member?
Most of the girls I deal with are here. I do have 3 women who are from out of the country. I have 2 from Pakistan and 1 from, I can't think what, it's over in that country. So we have 3, and they've actually kind of live in the same area right now. But most of the women are from here. I will tell you, a month ago, Donna and I were out. She just happened to be with me. And I approached a girl who I hadn't seen before. She didn't even know what city she was in. She had been left there. She knew she was in Ohio, but that's all she knew. And she had been on the street, I want to say maybe 12 hours at that point. And so, but most of the girls that we deal with are here locally, and they've just either somehow ended up here. And then you've got 70 and 75, and again, we could have that whole conversation about why we are number 4 in the nation for human trafficking. We've got that corridor, and we've got a major problem with the hotels on Miller Lane. And they can act like they're all nice and great, maybe some of them are, but you know, let's not pretend that they aren't any different than some of the other you know, pay by the hour hotels that we see in other areas, because they're not.
Right, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, is that I think the traffic term that we have is kind of a misnomer, because most of the stuff that's happening is coming locally, and some of these individuals that are in the situation are not being moved like down the highway. There are, of course, those cases, but sex trafficking in general is just using sex as somebody's benefiting from someone else's body using sex. So that can be in any kind of situation. That can be within your own home, like the situation where it's a mother who was selling her daughter. Like, I think traffic is a misnomer that's commonly used, and so we have to kind of think about it as not, like you said, just snatching people off the streets. These instances do happen. It's not that they don't exist, but it's actually more common that people are groomed into these situations. Whether it's through a situation where you have a Romeo kind of complex where you just look up to someone and they kind of trade you into it. But there's always kind of an element of coercion, fraud, or grooming that happens, to where these young individuals do not realize what is happening until it's much too late, and then they feel like they do not know where to go or what to do. So we have to catch it very young. I think it's really important to be in schools, just kind of being like, this is what you should be careful of. This is the kind of behavior, if someone is treating you like this, these are red flags that you should see, because when people leave that school environment, for whatever reason happens, it becomes easier to groom and take in a young person, because they're looking for someone to trust. So it's all about someone being very manipulative and charismatic and forming a way of trust with someone into the system.
Yeah, in the community, they call that pimps and hoes, basically. And that narrative is a common narrative in the community. I just said it like that so people can understand. But go ahead, brother.
Well, let me catch up 3 questions back. Dayton Police are now focusing all their decoy operations, and they're focusing on the Johns. They're not focusing on the prostitutes. Now, if there's a prostitute out in the middle of the street, somebody calls, yes, we go and address that problem. But the proactive work that we're doing is focused mostly in East Dayton, and we're working in conjunction with the county to focus on Miller Lane. A lot of these are also focused because of the internet, Backpage, the websites that are sex classified that they get into. The second half of that is the kidnapping, the snatching off the streets. Yes, it may happen. Last year there were 57 kidnappings in Dayton, but every one of them was familiar. It was somebody grabbing their 3 kids, custody disputes, domestic violence. It wasn't into going into sex trafficking. And something you mentioned was the $50 mark. That's way overpaying. I hate to say it that way, but
Yeah, I know.
glamorizing, I mean, a lot of this comes from
Right.
the media glamorizing, you know, you see the movies and it's so, just,
Yeah,
I can tell you a story.
right.
When I first came on, I had a gentleman fall and hit his head, and he bled to death inside of a group home. We were doing the investigation, and I was talking to the other men that lived with him, and they were saying how great he was and how they're going to miss him. And one guy pulled $4 out of his pockets.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that lived with him goes, "I didn't know you had any money, give me $1." And the guy looked at him and said, "No, I've got just enough for a whore and a fifth of gin."
Right, right.
$4. That just shoots that whole image of prostitution being something glamorous to pieces.
Yeah, you're right, right.
And so $50 is just way too much. That's,
Yeah, I just said 50.
it's
but-
more Subway and a place to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the sad part. I told you I was recovering, so in those crack houses, man, it's so sad because those girls, they fiend, and the guys too, they fiend so bad till to want something that they'll do stuff for some crumbs, $2 or $3 worth of crack, and that's not, that's residue, you know. So
I don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead, go ahead. No,
I
go ahead.
want to make it clear the difference between trafficking and having consent and bodily autonomy. So a woman who takes a system that's been used against her for all of history and flips it on its script to better herself, that's not necessarily trafficking, even though it might be a product of a culture that is very toxic. So if we're talking about human trafficking, we can focus on, there's a difference. If that woman was coerced, whether by another woman who's a trafficker or another man who's a trafficker, there's someone coercing her, whether with drugs or money or shelter or some other way to make it to where this is her only option, that's human trafficking. If a woman is taking upon the power of herself to manipulate a system, that's not human trafficking. It's about the ability and power of control that a person has in a situation. So if you take the power or control away from someone, then that's human trafficking. If you're forcing them into any kind of labor, whether it's sex labor, manual labor, that is where we're talking about trafficking. If you guys want to have another panel on rape culture and the societal culture surrounding how we view sexuality and gender and all of that, that's a whole other bag of issues.
That's a good second piece. Because I think that's important, like I said, it's about sex in general. Real quick, we still got a few. Gabrielle, would you just speak real quick to what, Gabrielle is a newly elected school board member, and Will Smith back there. And I really wanted, because I really think that the schools, we need to combat the problem on all sides of this, in the school system. When I was a kid, they had a comprehensive drug abuse awareness program when I was in the 5th grade, and it was really in depth. It didn't work for me, but I had to go through what I had to go through. But could you speak to what the school board can do to address this issue?
Well, I think we're focusing on trafficking today, I think. And it is quite challenging when we talk about, I think you talk about going to middle schools and talking about students about, raising awareness. But I think by then, it's a little bit too late for some of them. Obviously,
Excuse me,
there.
come around this microphone, please.
Thank you. So if we're talking about early childhood, we won't be able to go and speak to these children and raise awareness of something that they do not absolutely understand. And so I think one thing that we can do in the schools is to actually train the teachers so that they can see, the red flags. Because I spoke with some students that have come from other countries, and they claim, they're not abuse, because a lot of the things that we consider abuse, they don't understand. They think it's normal. So it's not until, we get to the very specifics that they say, yes, well, I had sex with my dad because I thought that's what dads are supposed to do. And so I think we need to train the teachers to be able to see the flags at an early age and continue raising awareness from middle school up, so that, not only the teachers can help out, but the students know what it is to be trafficked and what that means, the implications, etc. Will, do you want to say something?
Okay, well, I think that from the previous conversation we're having, we have to make sure that have things well defined, because there's different avenues and lanes that these kind of conversations go into. And one thing we don't want to do is confuse people. And as we see, the media can get people hyped up about things. So we want to make sure that we're doing clear distinctions between, sex culture, rape culture, toxic sexual culture, sexual norms, human trafficking. These are things where we want to make sure that we're making clear distinctions, not just for our little ones, but their parents as well. And some of the things that we look at when we talk about the Safety Act, the apps where, the app that they're working on to fix right now, DPS, where we can track our buses. Like these are the things, community awareness. We had a situation just in our neighborhood recently where a guy came out, my little, she catches the bus at 7:15 in the morning. As you know, this time of year, it's dark outside. And so just making sure we're aware, just awareness of these kind of things. And then as you move into what the schools inside the building, you do have chances for comprehensive sexual education. You have these kind of things, you have awareness programs, getting and talking to parents. Just making sure we get our parents comfortable with having these difficult discussions, because you don't want to create a situation where the parents are thinking, hey, you're overstepping our boundaries by having conversations that we want to have at home as well. And so that's why one of the things I want to do as a school board member is bring these things together, bring conversations from community to the schools to understand we have to have these conversations as a community. So I don't think that there's one magic thing that we can do, and I think that's one thing we have to make sure that we know moving forward, is that when we deal with sex trafficking, there's no major one thing. But I think there's small things, there's policy things, there's ways that we can talk to, I went down to Cincinnati and talked to Stephen Johnson Grove. He's a wonderful resource, and I would say reach out to somebody like that. And when you actually see some of the products of sex trafficking, some of the cases when you see women that have gone through and, she has to register as a sex offender because she was in a car with a woman who was dropped off at a strip club and they get arrested and she's in the car with it. Like, there's so many different facets that we have to talk about. So I think what we have to do first is get our community comfortable with having difficult discussions. And that's the first thing that I think we need to do. And then make sure that we're not leaving out the groups that are affected. A lot of times we leave out the people that are affected because we don't want to dive down into these reaches. And so I think that's the one thing that as a school board member I want to do, is make sure that we're not leaving out the disparate people when we bring these conversations to the table.
Thank you, brother. Go ahead now.
Okay, so if these people are involved in human trafficking, sex trafficking, where do they live? Where is this warm bed and this shelter? Is it a hotel on Miller Lane, or you guys don't know?
Well, I think it just depends. Miller Lane is where they hook up. That's the hookup spot.
And it's a lot of times cheap hotels, and oftentimes victims would rather be in a cheap hotel than a homeless shelter. That's just, but I wanted to, so that we're clear, the definition for Ohio is trafficking persons occurs when someone knowingly recruits, lures, entices, isolates, harbors, transports, provides, obtains, or maintains another person to be subjected to involuntary servitude or to be compelled to engage in sexual activity. What you describe legally as someone snatching someone is kidnapping, and that's far different than the scenario of picking up with someone for sexual hire. It's usually someone who, as someone indicated, they're charismatic. It's someone that's a boyfriend, or someone that's a relative, or someone that's a woman, someone that may be a mother, someone that may be a girlfriend that said, this is how we make the easy money. So oftentimes it's not as easy, and it's a nebulous area where you can't really define who that person is. But those signs are, for example, in the beauty industry, I mean in the cosmetology, if a boyfriend comes and sits and he has to stay there the entire time that they're there, and all of a sudden the young woman has more money than she normally has. And the biggest area I think that's at risk are schools and in the juvenile court system. That's where when you're sent away, and homelessness, and I think the sister brought it up, homelessness, poverty, and lack of a family structure, those things, those persons are at risk. They're clearly at risk, and most of the time they have dropped out of school by 9th or 10th grade because someone has already, or somehow they have already gone onto the road of prostitution.
That's good. You got a question?
Just briefly, just to highlight what you were saying about it's important in schools, the average age of minors that are sex trafficked or labor trafficked in the U.S. and Ohio is 12 to 14 years old. So just to drive that home, that it's really important that we're getting into schools to teach them about these issues and how to protect themselves.
Go ahead.
I understand all this stuff. I went to another sex trafficking meeting for grandparents meeting. And they were saying that some kids have been trained to entice other kids. So what are some of the signs that you should look for? It might not even be an adult that's enticing that kid, it could be a kid. So what signs are available that you can notice or see in that kid that something like that is going on? What's out there?
You ladies should probably speak to the judge. Probably speak to that. I couldn't tell you.
Well, I think that one of the signs with, we often think that it has to be junior high or later middle school. And I agree with you, and that conversation needs to start at that age. Now, there's recently been a book and a video called Push Out that's talking about black girls. And this video talks about young girls who are in the 4th and 5th grade who dress sexual, who may act inappropriate with twerking, who may, have playful acts with other girls or other boys that you might notice. And those things. And then when we talk about, and the thing that I understand, and this is from over 30 years of practice, is when we talk about when mom and dad come to school and parents come, well, no, that's not the new paradigm. The new paradigm is auntie or grandmother. It's not mom and dad. Okay, so people who often move several times, if they've been to several schools, oftentimes if they've been to a homeless shelter, if there's an older uncle or someone that picks them up and seems to be standing over them quite often, those are some of the signs that you clearly look at. But when we talk about over-sexualized dressing at a young age, that's one of the biggest signs that you can look at. And those things, and sometimes people look at it, the child's being precocious or the child's just cute. But we need to call it as it is. And when they're dressing and their nails are long and they're doing things that are not age appropriate, then we need to start taking a look at that and start looking at our home environment until we start tying our schools and our homes and our churches and our communities together, and then providing for those people who have these children. And it's not necessarily mom and dad. And now we confront people who are 35, 30-year-old grandmothers. And that's just that is the reality.
That's the new norm, right? I just wanted to switch it up a little bit, real quick, because I think, and this is personal to me, in my neighborhood, like I was saying earlier, prostitution is a big thing. I mean, I can stand on the porch, and, you know what I mean? And the girls oftentimes, with the Black Panthers, the headquarters is at my house, so we would have community events out in my yard, and we would feed them and give them shoes and stuff, and those care packages you would talking about with the feminine stuff and the toothpaste and all that. But I wanted to ask on the political people, or the law enforcement people, you know, sometimes I catch the bus at 5, 6 in the morning on Riverview Avenue. There's no street lights, you know what I mean? And so I called the city. They said everybody in the city wants their neighborhood lit up. But I believe that there are certain areas in the city that require a little bit more attention than others. You feel what I'm saying? So what is it that we could do right now? You know, because we always talking about, I'm a right now person. The revolution is going on right now, right? And we always talk about starting a conversation, or, you know, we got to talk to this person or that. What can the people that are suffering in my community do right now to clean up the environment? It's nothing against those girls, right? Because I got some people that I love that's out there on the corners. So it's nothing, you know, so what do we do right now to make our neighborhood a better place right now? And I'll just pass it down.
That's a great question, and I just want to raise this one point. When you talk about human trafficking, and you ladies from the Oasis House, and the YWCS can attest to this, but the human trafficking industry is a $150 billion industry. $1 billion. You're talking about a lot of money, an industry that, quite frankly, and to be honest, it's not going anywhere, unfortunately. The other thing is that, and you have spoken to this as well from the YWCA, is that you see a lot of this activity in marginalized communities. That's purposely designed. We all know that. It's purposely designed that our marginalized communities, our Black and brown communities, are disinvested, that they are suffering from deplorable conditions. 2015, was it 2015, 2017, there were a number of bodies that were found in abandoned garages, yet and still these garages are still standing. The conditions on which we're living in and which we are operating on a day-to-day basis is by design. It's a reason why they're still existing. As horrible as those numbers are, as horrible as those statistics are, that is what funnels a lot of the state and federal dollars in our community. And so when you talk about your community development dollars, and you talk about your poverty rate, you talk about all of those different issues that we're up against, again, that's how those dollars are funneled into the community. So if you are in fact eradicating the issue of poverty and you are demolishing a number of the vacant structures in your community, then what happens to the dollars, right? You no longer have any because you tore down all of the houses. So again, you're speaking of, there's class issues, there's the poverty issues, inequality, they're all complex and they're all intertwined. So again, to hold people accountable, as our reporter has stated, as well as our judge, we have to hold people accountable, but we also have to look at other innovative and creative means of how we're really addressing these issues. There's no reason why we should still, even in my neighborhood, and I know the Panthers had a rally, there was another dead body found in a garage. And the garage burnt down, and the garage is still standing. We're allowing these type of things to continue in our community, and we're not asking people for questions, we're not asking them for answers, and we're not being diligent and aggressive about addressing these ills in our community. And we have to look at ways for us to, again, to start solving these problems.
You have a question? I'm going to give to you in a second.
I think we're getting to it. It was because I live on Main Street. I've been in, you guys have been here forever. I'm the newcomer. I've lived in Dayton 4 years. And as I move to the area of Main Street is my new neighborhood. And I'm trying to figure out how I work to clean up Main Street. And what can I do? First of all, how I was interested in how to identify the issue, because I have been approached. And so, and yeah, it's more like 20. That's what she was asking. But how do I identify it, and what options do I have to help improve that street primarily? And then how do I be aware of it? And that's what I'm here listening and taking notes on.
Did you sign that?
What I did.
Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get in touch with you. We're gonna put together a working group to do just what you said.
Okay.
What's your name?
I'm Mike Mitchell. That's one.
Got the star.
I'll just speak to, I know sometimes when we talk about this, we can feel overwhelmed, and it's like, where do I start? Maybe you're not a political person, you want to do more at your house. I just want to encourage you, if you're a parent, if you're an aunt, if you're a grandparent, you can do stuff at home. Education, that can come from you. We have more technology in an Apple iPhone now than they did when they put the rocket on the moon. And we are giving it to 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds. And we're exposing them to the world. You say you don't see it maybe at truck stops. Probably because they have been on sites and applications. A calculator on your phone, the calculator app, that's not a calculator. That can be used to hide apps. Look at your kids' phones. Look at your niece's phones. I don't care. They've got more technology in their hands. Do you know that 18,000 kids a day are sex sorted? And we haven't even began on that issue. And so they get so overwhelmed because why? They made one mistake that led to another mistake, and next thing you know, that's how they end up trafficked. These things can happen, and they think like, we say to our kids, what were you thinking? Well, there's a huge difference between the brain of an 8-year-old and a 22-year-old, but yet we've given them technology in their hands. So I don't want you to feel, I want you to feel encouraged that there is things you can do. If maybe it all seems so overwhelming, just take that first little step maybe at home to let your kids know about the sex sorting, about how the Romeo effect that we've talked about today. That's how you can start, and then go to all these trainings that we've all talked about. You will learn something. We have a great gym with Abolition Ohio, like she said. I've been to so much of their stuff, and they will help you. They want to educate you. And UD Law School, they have been a great partner for Oasis House, and I've been there many times with the students. People want to help, but sometimes you feel overwhelmed. So just start with the cell phone today, and just look for things, because a lot of times it can become, they started with just that one little mistake. So just, you have the power to change things, and if maybe it just seems overwhelming, just start at home today, and then work your way. All of us, I'm sure, can give you all the ways you can help.
Yeah.
I would actually go to quote and paraphrase President Obama, that being the fact that we are the change that we see.
Yes.
One thing that's very apparent by the presence of the day on this cold day and the passion that everyone has spoke with concerning this issue and its impact on our community is that everyone in here is empowered. We have people who are informed, and so what it starts with is that this is the beginning of a conversation that we all can start, regardless of your role, regardless of your job, your title, office. None of that stuff matters. The most important role that we all occupy is that as a concerned citizen. Everyone in this whole entire room is a concerned citizen, and so that means that we should all feel very empowered to get something done. I would echo and agree with all the sentiments that the previous panelists have spoken, that being the fact that we all should be very encouraged. To your point on Main Street, there are certain issues, and we know there are hot spots, areas that are more prone, and I think those are things where we have to be, as Will Smith said earlier, we have to be able to be comfortable with having difficult conversations in our community, because we know things go on, but they continue to persist and go on when we don't speak up. And so it's that old adage, when you see something, you say something. That's what the beginning of this is.
So I just want to say to the board members, so my son is in the 6th grade. I mean, he's not at Dayton Public no more, my other two are. So when we talk about being comfortable, I sub at his school, and they had a whole very first project of the school year was the dangers of internet. And the topics were sexting, online friends, and bullying. So I didn't get a note in the mail saying, we're talking about sexting and whatever. They just educated them children on what sexting was. They showed visuals with blurred out boobies and butt and not Dayton Public and everything, saying this is what not to do and this is what to do. So when we talk about being comfortable, boo, because nobody's ever going to be comfortable with talking about sex to little kids. However, the society that we're living in now, sex is in their lives at an earlier age because of social media and all that. So I think that when we talking about educating our children and our parents being comfortable, I mean, they have these cell phones, they have these different things, and I understand from a parent's perspective, and I'm kind of a free spirit, so that didn't bother me at all. I was so happy that my son got that sexting and all that, but I think when we talk about urban districts and people who are economically disadvantaged and all these things, we always talk about how people are uncomfortable, but we're the ones being targeted and the ones who are suffering the most from these things and not getting educated about them. I mean, they got drug programs they have. Also, they have, I got an email that said basically every child in this building is going to get some type of mental health, whatever. If you don't want to do it, you have to opt out. Otherwise, your child is doing it. So I think when we talk about our children, when it comes to the city, there are certain, I don't want to say ways around uncomfortable parents, because we are always going to have parents who are not on board with talking to kids early about sexual things. However, I think that it's a must when it comes to our children, because when they talk about who's the most targeted and they talk about economically disadvantaged people, that is Dayton Public Schools. 98% of the children who go to Dayton Public Schools are economically disadvantaged. So forget that comfort crap. We got to get in there and we have to really educate our children. So I just want to say that so we can get on the board.
It's complicated. It's complicated because we try to have programs.
Uncomplicated.
We tried to have programs in my church and
because church is different.
well, but I'm just saying, I'm just using this as an example. And we talked about homosexuality and they got mad. Some of the parents got mad and they didn't want you talking to their kids about that, right? And so it's complicated because, you know, people have different belief systems and so, you know.
I know, but the belief system, you can believe what you want to believe, but this is happening. People are getting sex trafficked, economically disadvantaged people are getting sold, they're getting targeted. So you can believe, so take them out of the school then. I mean, I don't know what to say, they're not going to do it because I don't know.
Yes, that's true. I think when it's also, we have to think about statistics as a whole too. We talk about human trafficking and it is 12 to 14-year-olds that are most commonly human trafficked in the United States. And then we talk about just the first time on the national average that a young person will see porn for the first time is 11 years old. The national average for the first time someone will have sex is 13 years old. So like your kids, the kids in the community, they already are talking about sex with each other. They're already online looking at things. And so would you rather an educator and or yourself as a parent be the one teaching them healthy sexual relationships, or would you rather them learning it from each other, learning it from someone who has groomed them into trusting them, or learning it from the internet? And I think it's important to draw that line as like, who should be teaching your children about sexuality, healthy sexual relationships, human trafficking, sexual assault, rape culture, like who is the one? And if you want it to be you as a parent, then that's great. Go to some trainings, learn yourself, and then bring it home to your kids, and you're the trusted individual that's telling them what is okay and what is not okay. If you want it to be their teachers, then help the school board get it implemented into the schools. Like, those are the small things you can do. If you think education went away, with, as an educator myself, I'm always going to be like, education is the most important part of prevention, is then you have to, as parents and community members, support that education. Be like, okay, and if you don't support something, then be a voice and say why you don't support it. Don't just be like, I think it's, actually voice your opinion and explain why and come up with alternatives. Because the problem with education is that there's a lot of people who will always think that something is done wrongly or incorrectly, But if you're not coming with new solutions to the table, then nothing's going to change. So if you have these wonderful Dayton School Board members here right now, and you think that something should be done, you think something's wrong, you think something should change, talk to them about it. They're your representatives. They're representing you. They're going to use their voice to uplift yours. And that's another thing I'm just going to tack on with marginalized communities. I am a white girl from the South, and I have a lot of privilege by just being white. And the best thing you can do, if you are a person with a lot of privilege, is to uplift the voices of those that it's most affecting. My voice doesn't matter in this. If we're talking about marginalized communities, who should we be asking is people within the community. Use your voice to help others who have not been given a voice to have that voice. And that is a very small thing you can do. Like just uplifting the voices that are not being heard, that are being affected the most by an issue. So definitely stand up for people of color whenever you can, and that comes down to bystander intervention. If you see something, say something, yes, but in human trafficking situations, please be very careful about walking up to someone and just saying something, because you do not know if their human trafficker is in eyesight, and that's going to hurt them. So my best advice for if you wanted to go out and do street ministry is what they call it a lot, if you want to go out and reach out to people, find a way that you can communicate with them that is not directly calling attention that you're labeling them as someone who has been trafficked. Like, if you have a note card that they can slip into their shoes, the best way to do this is to work with hospitals. Nurses often see these individuals more than anyone else, and they slip shoe cards into their shoes in the inpatient room so that they can have hotline numbers, they can reach out to websites. You have to be very careful because these people are being controlled. There is a power dynamic at play, and all of it's based on money, and people are very, very in control of where their money flow is coming from. And if you identify someone who is a sex trafficked individual and their sex trafficker is around, odds are you're putting that person in more danger than helping them. So unless you have a way to get them out of that situation in that moment, right, I would advise not, giving them a way to call or giving them a way to reach out is the better option.
Okay, 15 one now. We got about 15 minutes left, and and that's why I'm gonna work with you guys in the future, because I got some ideas about, how they have these stations where people can leave their babies, and they have this symbol. Well, we're working on a distress symbol for people who may be caught up in the sex trafficking. The ones that want to get out, I think it's important what you said, because everybody is not aware of the fact that they want to get out. And you just can't help people that's caught up in the pimp's mindset, And if you talk to some of these girls, the pimp has convinced them that this is what you are. You're my whore, and this is all you ever going to be. And so it's kind of fruitless to run up on folks. Something you want to say something?
Yeah, I did want to say something as far as the youth and how we educate them. Can you use the microphone? Yes. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to say, speaking on the youth we have, as far as how we educate them about human trafficking and things like that, and safe places they can go. Do you guys have anything like that in place?
Yeah. Yes. That's what they do.
Okay, they have safe places to go to. Okay, and then another thing is maybe to the schools, how we educate them in the schools, because I work with a lot of young people the majority part of my life. Okay, the things that I hear from them is that it's okay. Like if one girl, there's a guy and then there's 5 girls that likes this guy and all of them are okay with this guy being their boyfriend. Right. One happened on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the other girl, they're fine with that. And I found that disturbing, that this is their mindset. So we need to find a way somehow to change that paradigm with the way they think. So we have to be, like you said, more proactive. And it's everybody's responsibility, from the home to the community, to the organization, to the legislation. It's everybody's responsibility that we take care of our youth, we take care of one another.
Thank you. Down real quick, and then Rob. And then Tyrone, I'm sorry.
I'm Donna Moore. I'm an old white woman as opposed to a young white person. And I'm here at this point representing the Poor People's Campaign. And I just want to say that as I've listened to all of you, this problem of human trafficking is a problem of poverty.
That's right.
It is one expression among many of poverty. 44% of our population is poor, or so poor that if they have a disaster of $400, they could be out of a house and on the street. Does that make you angry?
Yeah.
It makes me very angry that that is the richest country of the world. And we got 44% of our people poor. And that makes them vulnerable to this human trafficking. If they're going to have sex with somebody to get a subway, what does that tell you about their vulnerability and what these kids are up against? What's in their head is when they grow up, they don't look forward to a job. That's what's in their head. And what do they have to get some money? Their body. We got to give them some other alternatives in our whole culture, our whole economy, and I'm not going to stand here and give you my spiel anymore. But I'm with the Poor People's Campaign. Anybody heard of the Reverend Dr. William Barber?
Yeah.
I hope a few of you have. Anybody heard of Martin Luther King?
Yeah.
More hands. William Barber has taken up the Poor People's Campaign of 50 years ago. He and the national tour will be here in Dayton on April 23rd. Put it in your calendar. And the national tour will be in Washington, D.C. on June the 20th, 2020. We want thousands, tens of thousands of people there, so that when you show up in Dayton and when you show up in D.C., you are telling your legislatures, local and national, pay attention. We are a new unsettling force, and we are here, and we're not putting up with this anymore.
All right.
That's what we need to be about. We need to care for these kids on the street. I'm not saying we don't, but it's a much bigger issue that we are up against. And we can't be up against it alone at Oasis House. We have to come together. Gay, straight, black, white, all of us have to come together and say 44% of this population being poor is unacceptable. Period.
That's right.
And I'll be done now.
All right, thank you, Don. Give it up for Donna, y'all. You know she's in the Black Panther. She is licensed. Come on, Rob.
I have cards I can share, and I'm eager to come to your organization and talk about the Poor People's Campaign. Hit me up.
All right. Come on, Rob.
Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Robin Marcus, and I'm the Dayton Regional Organizer for our future. But I'm here as a parent to 3 girls, 11, 13, 15, just about the statement about the youth. Some programs that are in Dayton schools that haven't been said, that my girls have been part of, Girls on the Run, Girls Lead. It helps with self-esteem. That's something that we have to start before. We build up your self-esteem, then that's a case of not getting them trapped into what they're dealing with. So I just wanted to make a couple points. There are programs in Dayton schools. We need more, but there are. I make sure that my girls get involved in everything to keep them out of trouble. You know, my dad did that with me, being in sports, playing instruments, whatever. It starts from home. We have to work with our teachers. We have to work with our educators. We have to work with the political system. You know, it's not just one person that's going to solve all these issues. We have to be together as a community in order to solve our issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
I wanted to just this panel discussion with indicating that there is hope, and I think it's a bright, shining hope on the horizon because conversations that are beginning and legislation is beginning. And as this officer said, when I started as a prosecutor over 30 years ago, it was looked at like a joke, prostitution, and the best thing a prostitute would do was be a confidential informant. And it wasn't looked at, and oftentimes jobs were not charged just a prostitute. But it is come to the point now where right now it's a first degree felony, human trafficking of 16 and 17-year-olds. And that legislation just passed. The safe harbor expungement legislation just passed this year. And as I stated in the beginning, I was selected as the judge to convene the safe harbor expungement. So anyone you know, because the stories were poignant of women who were in prostitution and were trafficked 20 years ago, and today they're authors. One lady was, she earned her associate's, her bachelor's, her master's, and she's working on her PhD. The collateral sanctions that prevented her from getting housing, getting a job, a good job, getting a driver's license, those things are collateral sanctions that we have to look at. So this program that I'm so proud of, and we're working with the Oasis House with some of the referrals that they will bring to this program. And I would lastly want to say that we need to celebrate those women who have come from And our whole idea of how we view the least of these. And now these ladies, their stories are poignant and they need to be celebrated. And we oftentimes need to bring these ladies, because trying to hear and letting them tell their story is more piercing than any of us could talk about. And so I know Mary Yakin is in your program, she knows me, so if Mary Yakin, and I indicate that if anyone that has come from human trafficking or prostitution, the only requirement is that you have had a conviction of solicitation, prostitution, or loitering. You qualify for the program, with the exception only you cannot get it expunged or sealed is rape, murder, and aggravated murder. So if there is hope.
I have one quick question for you. Is that the literature on that we passed out? I mean, this needs to be in the hand of every pastor, every social organization. I mean, this is stuff that we're saying as voters we want to see done. This stuff needs to be happening, and this needs to be celebrated.
Okay, I'll leave the copies today of the program and who's eligible and how they proceed to get those records expunged.
We just got a couple more minutes left, so make it quick. Steve? Well, Steve had his hand up. Just Steve and Brother Gilbert, yeah, y'all gotta make it quick. We ain't got but a few minutes, okay? So, Gilbert, don't preach, brother. Bring the Steve first. Then I'm gonna let you preach. That's my cousin. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, coming off what the pastor had to say, how can spiritual institutions help? Because we got a church on every corner, we got a mosque, we got a synagogue. How do spiritual institutions help in stopping this flow?
So this is kind of maybe a big ask, but it's something that YWCA Dayton has been thinking about for some time, is that while we have a shelter where we take in human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault cases for safe housing, there are only so many rooms that we can offer. And most of the time, if there's not a room available in I think we have 6 different locations that we can take in women, then we can refer them to Oasis House if there's no space there, but then they end up at places like homeless shelters like St. Vincent de Paul's, which is a good connection in the community, but because it's low staff and there's low volunteer, sometimes going into a homeless shelter can be just as dangerous as being out on the street, especially women who have come from human trafficking, who know that their trafficker will know to look for them at these locations. So if there's any way that spiritual institutions can start to think about the impact of having safe spaces for these women to go to when they feel like they have nowhere else to go, whether it's just being able to sit in a church pew at night during the high time hours when they're going to be looked for, whether it's serving food and meals, whether it's it's stuff that's, or even just offering to form a group of people to go volunteer at places like St. Vincent de Paul's, to volunteer at places like YWCA Dayton. Do you take volunteers at Oasis House? Do you take volunteers at Oasis House? Yeah, so, you don't have to go to training. There's 40-hour training. Mercy House. So just thinking, like, finding the locations and organizations that already exist within your community that are serving this population and offering your time and your commitment to whether volunteering or using them and constantly sharing their resources. If someone comes to you knowing that you can refer them to places like Oasis House, refer them to places like YWCA Dayton and Mercy House, like knowing what your connections are in the community can be just that life-saving grace for someone that comes to you.
Can I just real quickly, to address what the churches can do? Oasis got its start from Pastor Sharon Amos, who was a pastor up in North Dayton, where the story is a prostituted woman was out in the parking lot and she would not come inside the sanctuary. And Pastor Sharon said, "Why don't you come in?" And she said, "I'm not worthy of that church." And one thing led to another. The congregation prayed and prayed, and guess what? Oasis emerged. That's how our ministry emerged. Yeah, so we're very proud of that.
All right, that's great. Okay, real quick, Gil, come on.
And that's the subject I was going to approach. I'm Gil, I'm a certified peer recovery supporter. I'm with the Eastern Seals, I'm a certified recovery coach. But I was going to address the church and our faith. We preach to the choir all the time.
Right.
The choir is inside the church, the work is outside the church.
Yes.
When I get up out of my comfort zone and I address that person walking up and down the street, then that's what we need to do, start doing.
Right.
They walk up and down our streets every day.
Right.
And we don't say nothing to them, give them a sandwich because you know they're hungry. If we start reaching out in love and to the people that's walking up and down the street, we can see our troubled youth everywhere, inside the schools, but do we say anything to them?
Right.
No. We'll talk about them, but we don't say nothing to them. You know, we gotta start doing our work. You know, reaching out to those people. It's a reason why that man is dirty walking up and down the street, but I won't talk to him. Why?
Right.
Because I think I'm better than him. Stop.
That's right.
We need to get out of our comfort zone.
That's right. Come on, sister, real quick.
I felt like I needed to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Benita Swanson, and I'm here representing a grassroots organization called Sisters Incorporated.
Okay.
And we are willing and ready to do whatever we can to empower and heal within our community. And we feel like it starts from within. So we're wanting to learn. So whatever you have that you can teach us, we would be really appreciative of that. I apologize for being late, so I missed most of what everybody had to say about the organization. It sounds like the Oasis has some education that they can provide for us. And then I wanted to piggyback off of what you said, that I'm encouraged as well, like the judge said here on the end, I'm very encouraged by the fact that we're all here today. I'm very encouraged that there are so many different organizations, including our brand new organization, who's willing to get out and help. I believe that Shanice is a very welcome sight in the political arena. And I'm going to take an opportunity to toot my own horn. As I said, I'm a truck driver, so I'm on the road. And I'm very proud to say that I came all the way home to Dayton, Ohio, so that I can this is Shanice's turn to stop. And I think that that's important because I'm listening to you, and I don't know who else is here from any other the local government offices. I think I heard somebody say that brand, yeah. I mean, other than who's here.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Oh, here you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like somebody mentioned the juvenile court. Did I miss that? She's juvenile court. Okay.
Yeah.
Because
You got school board, you got Will Smith back there on school board.
Okay.
Gabriella Pickett, right here, duly elected school board member. And then everybody in here is involved. Donald Moore with the 4 Weeks campaign, Robert Denise back there for our feature. Mama Zico is with the African American Elders Council. Brother Tyrone, the States Times, the Social Change. Shantae is with the New Black Panther Party. Linda Huggins is a Black Panther recruit. She is on those. Girl Maryland Bonnie Gus, he's a Black Panther recruit. Brother Muhammad back there, with the Nation of Islam next to you right here. Community Gardens. Brother Dwayne is with Urban Citizens for Social Justice. So we got the whole group of them. And so what we trying to do at the end of y'all work? We're trying to build a task force to deal with the sexual exploitation aspect of what's going on in the community, right? So we chose some good people in the we chose the best people, I think, right? So I want to ask y'all to commit to at least another meeting with myself and Dr. White. His church will actually be our base station in West Dayton. And so he's going to work in concert with the Black Panther Party. Y'all okay with the Black Panther?
Is there a hotline? Is there like a hotline or something that if you see something, you could say something on the hotline?
Yeah, there's several resources actually for that. So you can call the YWCA Dating Crisis Hotline, which is 937-461-SAFE. I memorized that because we all have to.
Right.
And then there's, I'm sure Oasis House has a hotline. And then there's the national line, which I can give to you.
Okay, you gonna stay out there for a few minutes?
Sure.
Okay, so we're gonna close out. Basically, I just want to say this. Y'all know who Fred Hampton is?
Yes.
Okay, Fred Hampton was the greatest Black Panther in my mind, right? Because what Fred Hampton did in Chicago was he organized everybody, okay? It was a white group called the Young Patriots. They had a Confederate flag, and what Fred did was he went in and taught them how to organize. He didn't try to take their flag. He went in and taught them how to organize and go back to their community and organize around their issues. He showed them that their issues were similar to poor Black people's issues. Well, he sent his pamphlets into the churches in Chicago and told them, don't try to tell them how to believe. Don't go in there and start bashing Jesus, but just help them organize so they can get their message out. That's how I run my chapter. Fred came up with the term, we are a rainbow coalition, right? We talked about different areas in Dayton where, exploitation goes on, but from my estimation, I'm getting Dayton. Everybody in Dayton is poor, you know what I'm saying? All those neighborhoods are exploited. And I understand the historical significance of certain groups of people being left out. We have to pay attention to that. Understand that, where we come from on that. But I just want to thank y'all for being here. We had such a good time. And look, can you imagine being in the same room with the police down the hall? But thank you so much. We're not against the police, I'm just kidding. And I want to turn it over to the pastor so he can close us out. And we had planned to give out some pepper spray, but we got started late. But I have 5 canisters, so I'm going to give them to the most vulnerable in the room, whoever that is.
Me.
5 is the most vulnerable
Me
in
and
the
my
room.
3 kids.
So, I got you covered. Thank you so much for coming, God bless.
Amen. Again, thank you, Down. Thank you to all our panelists who are here. Thank you to my frat brother, amen. Capasai, amen. Good news, Brandon McClain. But we do again want to just stress again the intrinsic value of every human being. For me, that is the driving force behind ministry. That's the driving force behind my theory of pastoral care. I was just sharing with Brother in Hall, and he said, Doc, you're a different type of Baptist preacher. And I said, I'm not sure what that means, but I just care for everybody. It doesn't make a difference what race, religion, creed, color. All of us are human beings, and that's what matters. To me, I believe that's what matters to God. And so it's ironic as we were talking, the young lady, Brother Dillon, we were talking earlier, the young lady came in and mentioned for me to come back and she just wanted some food. That's all. She just wanted some food. I didn't try to share the gospel with her. I took her downstairs and gave her some food. And I think that's what we need to do, one person at a time, one person at a time, one person at a time. We're a fairly new church, a year and a half old, six-status building. We don't have thousands of dollars and hundreds of members, but I gave them what we had. And I leave him going to the store and buy some more food to put down there because somebody else is going to need that. And so I think that becomes so important that each person does what they can do. We appreciate the Oasis House, we appreciate YWCA, but we got to do this at ground level. This has to be one-on-one where we start. But one of the things I think I would like us to look at in the future is the difference with looking at sex trafficking on a larger level as opposed to individual, kind of smaller in the sense. I think that we look at it from when they flying people in for the Super Bowl and sporting events, it's going to take a national conversation for that. What can we do about the prostitute walking down Main Street? She's there because she's being forced to do it and not because that's what she or he wants to do it, because we have male prostitutes out there now that are being such trafficked. So again, I thank everyone for being here. We look forward to doing it again, and we just want you to be encouraged. Let's close with prayer. Again, Heavenly Creator, we thank you just for this privilege, this space, this community that we have taken part of to dialogue and discuss pressing and pertinent matters that seek to minimize and eliminate the intrinsic value of each human being that you've created in your image. We pray now that our efforts have been meaningful, that they will be impactful, and that the conversation has been started, and the gravity of the issue is placed on more and more people's minds, that it's not some distant event that happens in New York or in Chicago or in LA, but it's right here in Dayton, right here in West Dayton, right here in Springboro, in Centerville. There's no community that this does not impact. There is no race that it does not impact, that all of us is susceptible to be hurt and harmed by the effects of human trafficking. And so God, right now, that you empower us, that you enable us to continue to make a difference in our various areas of influence. As we leave this place, we know that it's impossible to leave from your ubiquitous presence because you're everywhere that we know. In Christ's name we pray, and all of God's people say amen.